Hey everyone, I'm Mike Henry, and this is my Procreate 4.3 demo for the piece I call Pineapple Pete. Now, when I did this at an event that we have here in Barcelona called Nonstop Barcelona, where they have artists come and give talks and demos. I myself did not give a talk or demo, but I went to one, and the topic of the demo was pineapple. Use pineapple, I'll pineapple, and try to come up with some sort of a design. And so I did this guy right here. I just wanted to make it kind of silly, and I didn't really try to come up with some complicated, like, involve pineapple in an armor from a warrior or do. I just was like, screw it. I want to have fun with this because it's a goofy topic. Let's have a pineapple guy. So the entire talk was 2 hours long. A lot of people are always asking how long it takes to do one of these. And something kind of simple like this, where I had a time limit imposed on myself, I can tell you this took 90 minutes, and then I put in an additional 10 minutes after. So the speaker spoke for a bit, and then was like, I want all of you to draw with me. And so then we all started drawing. And then after I finished it, quote unquote, I was like, okay, let's do some more with it, just to take it home. So I'll actually separate out those stages, because I think it's important to see what how big of an impact those last minute changes can have on something. Also, the process here is a lot different from the link video, which was the last thing that I posted, and the last piece of art that I did really before doing this, because this is straightforward designing. I'm not taking into account iterations. There was a time limit, and I just said, well, I need to draw this, so I'm drawing this. So any decision that you see that's a shape decision or something about his expression or whatever, that's made on the fly in my head, and then I'm just throwing it down on paper. Now, the reason why I'm stressing that it was done in my head was not to be like, isn't that amazing, I did it in my head. That's not at all the point. The point is that any flaws that there are in this piece, or any opportunities for me to improve it, are not taken. So what you see here is just the very first thought, and then put down on paper, and then I just have to go with it because there's not a lot of time. Are there ways to make this particular character more interesting? Absolutely. Are there ways to make this character look even more like a pineapple? Because the general head shape isn't exactly like a pineapple, and the way the leaves are arranged for his head aren't exactly like a pineapple. And I could even go more in depth in making the sections, I guess you call them, of him more like a pineapple. So there's lots of things like that, and that's not even taking into account like his expression or how I'm actually handling the individual elements of his face or his clothes or whatever. So I'm just trying to point out that that's one of the major differences between the way the Link piece was created and the way something like this was created. With Link, everything was thought about, and again, whether or not you like that design or whether or not that could also be a better design, the point is that the time was taken, the iterations were made, and tests were performed, so to speak, to validate it. Whereas with this, it's just like, here's a guy with a pineapple head and he's wearing a hoodie. The only times you really see me making some adjustments is if you actually rewind. I make the sections of the pineapple like squares when in fact they're more like diamonds, and then so I quickly looked up a pineapple and made that change. Also, you can see here that I lay down a black hoodie, because I mean that's basically all I wear, but I wanted there to be more interest in this image, so I changed it to a blue hoodie pretty quickly. And then you'll see that when I'm actually doing the coloring of the pineapple himself, the local color of him, I'm also looking up reference and making sure that's right. And that's really as much work as I put into making it accurate. So if more time was taken and there was more of an actual iteration cycle, those types of things would be better. Something that's kind of interesting is, I didn't post anything last week, which, sorry for that, but I kind of needed a break. The last month was really intense with work and work events, and then trying to find time to do the videos was getting harder and harder. So I just decided, okay, I'm going to take one solid week off. And the funny thing is, I actually didn't draw anything new for a while. In between the Link and this pineapple piece, it was probably I don't know, 2-3 weeks or something like that, because I just didn't have the mental or physical energy to sit down and do anything. But then when I went to this talk and I actually just cranked this out, it sort of broke the seal, and it was like, okay, well, I just cranked that out super fast. And then over the weekend I did 2 more pieces, so we got some stuff stacked up coming, so you can look forward to that. I think you'll dig it. Like always, pay attention to my Instagram to see the pieces first, and then I usually on Instagram post the piece and then post like the time lapse, and then eventually come around and post the actual video here. So you can see on the pineapple there, I put in some of the local details that makes the pineapple a pineapple, like the way that it actually has its coloring, and it's got some of that little green in between the spaces and all that. So then I put some of the green in his ear because that just made some sense. And now I'm going into the actual lighting, the shadows. So I'm using a light tan, but it's slightly saturated, but not that much. And that is used for the shadows, which is a layer set to multiply. I'm doing what I usually do, which is sort of like a form shadow, and then I'm doing the cast light shadow after that. As I've said before, I hesitate to use true terms like ambient occlusion pass, and then because I just don't know that I'm actually doing that in such a true way. So I hate to use those terms when you could very easily look at this and be like, oh, that's not exactly an ambient occlusion. Like, I totally understand. So that's why I'm trying to use different terminology there, so that you're not like getting hung up on those specifics. The point is that I'm doing something kind of like an AO pass in order to capture the local form of the shapes, and then I'm doing another pass where it's the actual direct light and the shadows being created, etc. So that means that shadow layers are on 2 separate layers, and this is the first pass at that. And then after you see me go through and sort of establish the like neutral light form of the entire thing, you're going to see the direct light get applied after that. So we're working on his top half now, doing the same pass. We're defining a little bit those little sections, because as you can see in the part that I haven't painted yet, that that local color isn't giving me like nearly enough information. Now, again, we know that this was done in just 90 minutes, so everything had to move really quickly, especially things like the design of his face and how those intersections, or not intersections, those sections like sort of stop, and how they group around his face. Probably if I was putting a lot of work into this, I would make sure that had more of a clear patterning, but alas, no time to really solve that, especially once I was already in the thick of it. So, but you can see that I need some of that shadow information to define those sections and to define everything. And as it's going, it's kind of going from a bit of a messy train wreck into something that's more tightened up, but it certainly doesn't become clean and truly tight as far as the paint quality goes, because the whole thing is messy, and obviously it's going to be messy. I'm using the turpentine brush because when I use that brush, I feel like the pressure to make everything perfect is way lower, and since I didn't have a whole lot of time, that was a beneficial quality to have. So now we're moving into the direct light shadow. I wanted, for the sake of simplicity, and because he's just sort of like a single figure standing there, I just wanted a top-down light, something fairly simple. I thought that would be the best way to communicate him, also to communicate his bulbous head, sort of casting that shadow, which I probably could have pushed even further, but I didn't have a whole lot of time to consider the lighting and everything. Since I did in that time a full painted thing, albeit a simple full painted thing, this was around the time that we were getting the warning that we only had, 15 minutes left to wrap everything up, and so I had to start really cranking on this to get it out the door. So you'll see me making some decisions that are hastily made, but I think for the most part it all holds up. I don't think it's that bad of a that bad of a train wreck when it comes down to the lighting. You can see the sectioning of those layers by the way that I'm painting, that I have those distant leaves that have their lowered opacity, then I have a set of leaves that's sort of the mid-ground leaves, and then I have that one singular leaf all the way in the front that is, as you can see here, not cleared yet. So now we're working on helping to define those sections even more. Since we have those softer shadows that are defining them all neutrally, now we're putting in the shadows that actually show the dark side of them on the under part, which is really making those pop out and feel like they have dimension. Now, I did look at a little bit of pineapple ref for this, but I want to stress that I did not like kill myself to make this look exactly like a pineapple. So if you happen to be a pineapple expert, please don't chastise me in the comments. Also, if you noticed, I made the inside of the mouth yellow because I wanted the inside of his mouth to look like, you know, if you were to cut into a pineapple. But it's more of like an orangey yellow because I also wanted it to be, you know, cast in shadow and have it be a color that's separate from the outside skin, but then also not be like so bright yellow that it doesn't look like it's light, or excuse me, so bright that it doesn't look like it's dark. I didn't want it to look like his mouth was like glowing. So it's kind of more of like a really ripe interior, I guess you could say. So now we're just finishing up some of these shadow details. Right there, I just put the reflection on his eyes from like his cheeks and surrounding area. In order to give some extra definition and pop to his face, I added this yellowing on his ears and nose, almost like when we put blush on a human character. And then I put that illumination in the center of his face and some of that bounce coming up from the background onto the underside of his head. There's also some bounce on his zipper from his hoodie, and I'm putting like this little outline to give it some stylistic flair as well as some texturing in the background. Now I want to stop it here for a second because this is a very important stage. This is the point in which I declared the piece done because we ran out of time and everything. I thought that I got it to at least a level that I would feel comfortable with, but as I've said before, I always let a piece sit for a certain amount of time before I truly call it done or before I share it anywhere, because after I stare at it for a while I usually get sick of it, or I see some opportunities, or whatever it is. It could be a lot of things. It could be negative emotions, positive emotions, it could be any of that kind of stuff, and I see areas that I can improve it. So what are my opportunities here? We've got the metal. The metal is very dull right now, which is fine, and the leaves are very dull right now. Both of those could get some shines. I could also play with some extra bounce lights. I can maybe tighten up a couple of areas, and so this is the process that I start going through. I could also darken him a bit to sort of round out his shape. I could give him a bit of a vignetting on his own body, like a silhouette vignetting. And so these are some things that I'm starting to process while I look at it. And even though I kind of like the unfinished quality of this, I decide, no, I should go in and actually bring it a little bit closer. So I spent 10 extra minutes after lunch. We all took a lunch break, and then I came in and added these details. First, we're going to turn off all the lighting and just add those little segments in the zipper. They're stylized, they're not perfect, but that's sort of the point of this whole thing, is not perfect, but fun, I guess you could say. Then after we do that, we come in and add the shine on the zipper. So we were adding the shine on the actual zipper pull and just sort of tweaking that and figuring out what opportunities we have to add details there. In fact, in retrospect, I probably would have gone in and maybe added even like a couple of nicks and scratches, but sometimes when you're trying to tell a story like that's weathered and there's nicks and scratches, it really works for something like a warrior, or maybe if he was like way punkier and we were trying to push that. And other times it could just be distracting. So, you know, trying to find the happy medium between adding all those little details and then pulling back is important. So there's also, just so you can see here a little bit better, the bounce light on the zipper pull from the hoodie. Just trying to sell the materials a little bit. Now we'll add the eyelashes on the eyes. It's not that it's necessary because he's a pineapple, but it adds punch to the eyes. It separates the eyes. Same thing with that little nostril, banging in the little dark nostril hole there, really sells that. And now we're just adding a little bit of extra definition to his face, just so that those shapes read a little bit more clearly. Here I'm just creating a vignetting on him, which is by merging all of his layers, copying them all into one, and then turning it black, and then I'm erasing away from it to reveal, and adjusting the opacity of that. And now we're just adding those little details in the leaves, and we'll darken the mouth just a little bit more, just to really push the depth of the mouth there. And those are the last minute details that sort of bring this piece home. This is the final piece right here. I'm going to flip back and forth between them so that you can see what that extra 10 minutes gives, because I think that extra 10 minutes, we always talk about that. That's sort of an important part of the process. So here it is before the changes. This is after 90 minutes, and then extra 10 minutes thrown in. You can see that flick on and off there. And that's what brings us to this point here. Honestly, it's like a dumb little drawing, dumb little painting, but I really like him, so I kind of just really enjoyed working on this. I hope you enjoyed checking out the video. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and I will see you on the next one. And if you're looking for me on the internet, these are the places where you can find me.